Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cucina Aurora Kitchen Witchery podcast. Another very awesome episode today of Conversational Witchcraft. Today we have the most incredible woman. Her name is Dawn Reno Langley. Yeah, another Dawn. So you know she's awesome. Dawn Reno Langley is a writer, a theater critic, editor, writing coach, and educator who has devoted her life to social justice issues. After her first article, published at the tender age of 9, questioned the likelihood of an attack on the US soil during the Cuban Missile Crisis, she found her voice. Langley's novels, such as The Silver Dolphin and The Mourning Parade, examine socially relevant topics like environmental issues. Her new book, You Are Divine: A Search for the Goddess in All of Us, discusses the role of female religious icons in contemporary life and how each woman embodies divine traits. This is so exciting. She holds an MFA from Vermont College, a PhD from the Union Institute and University, and is the president of Rewired Creatives, Inc. Do I call you Professor? Do I call you Dawn? I'm so excited to have you here. What do you prefer?
Thank you. You can call me Dawn. I earned the Dr. Langley, but I'm not totally comfortable with that. So you can call me Dawn.
Dawn, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending
Thank
a
you for
little bit of
having me.
I'm like so amazed by you. I'm always amazed by people that are very scholastic. I myself don't, I have an associate's degree. I'm much more of a hands-on learning person. I am not somebody that can learn in a academic environment very well. And so I'm always impressed by people who have amazing higher education because I understand what you go through to get those letters after your name. My dad
That's
was
why I don't mind so much when someone wants to say doctor. I don't mind because it was a long time.
How long did it take you?
Well, it took me 4 years. I was the first one to graduate from my cohort. We went sort of in pods, through the
Yeah.
process. But yeah, it took me 4 years. Everybody else, it took at least 6.
Yeah.
6 to 10.
It's a long haul. Anyone who wants to pursue a PhD, it's it's a lifetime of work and devotion. And I don't necessarily think that people realize the work and devotion that takes. My father had a PhD in uh, counseling and sociology, and he didn't get his PhD until he was, I mean, in his late 50s, early 60s. And I have a cousin who is pursuing her PhD in art history, and it is no joke. So congratulations to you
Thank you.
for being awesome. And you have all of these books and you do all of these things and you're this amazing social justice warrior. And now you're coming out with this book on divine feminine energy and finding that within all women. I know I'm kind of starting, I like to learn people's journeys, how did you get from the beginning to here? But I have to know how this came about.
It really started way back in the very beginning when I started going to church. We had a
Mm,
church that was this big stone castle kind of place with those fantastic stained glass windows. And I spent a lot of time there.
mm,
I grew up in the projects, and we moved when I was fairly young to a house that my grandmother owned, and the church was at the bottom of the street. So I was
mhm,
down there for brownies, Girl Scouts, Sunday school,
mhm,
church, you name it. I played basketball there. And when I wanted to do the thing that I thought was so cool, which was to light the candles before the service on Sundays, I was told I couldn't because I wasn't a boy and only boys could be acolytes. So
mhm.
that led me on a very deep questioning of everything that was religious in my life. And I did search a long time for something that spoke to what I thought was supposed to be justice for all, rather
Mm,
than a religion that blessed troops before they went into war. I didn't see that as something that I saw in the Bible even though the Israelites, I mean, it's just one thing after another. Years and years went by. I found Buddhism. It spoke to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept looking for that female face.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find one until I really dug and started looking at females in general as writers and as human beings, and the female face, and that led deeper into goddesses and the philosophy, and it just opened up a whole new world.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I
wow.
mean, I grew up, you said you grew up in the projects, so I'm going to say New York because only people from New York say
Boston.
Boston. You were in the Boston projects. Okay.
Mhm.
So I grew up in New York. I'm not in the projects. I grew up out on Long Island, but very similar, super religious, very Catholic, and what do you have at growing up in that environment in terms of a female spiritual guide? You have the Virgin Mary, right? It's either
Or the
or
whore.
or the whore. So it's either you're the Virgin Mary or you're Mary Magdalene. These are the
Right.
only two females you have to identify with, and the way the church talks about these women and how they're shown, whether it's statuary or stained glass, like you said, you don't see yourself in them. I never saw myself in either one of those,
Right. Right.
women. It's difficult. It's difficult. And so at what point, so then you found Buddhism, right? How old were you when you were introduced to Buddhism?
The first time I was probably early 30s. So between the time that
Wow.
I actually left the church. When I got married the first time, I married a Catholic man, and the Protestant church said, "We're not marrying you in your church." And I had
Yep.
been there longer than the minister had. I
Yep.
had been inside that church, and I thought, wait a minute, dude, what about all the years I spent here? I taught Sunday school. I
Yes.
I did finally become an
Yes.
acolyte, and I can't do this. So then I started really searching. I became agnostic for a while. I didn't
Mhm.
believe in anything. Uh, I knew there was something, some kind of power, but I believed it was energy, and
Yeah.
still believe that. And then I connected with Jehovah's Witnesses. I wanted to see what they were all about. So
Wow.
I did a couple of years of study with them and got out of there fast. They don't, I mean, seriously, it's scary in a lot of ways. They were good people, though. I can't say anything wrong about the people. I just
Yeah.
question the way that they're
The
made to believe.
organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is
And then
it's a little extreme.
yep. And then a friend of mine in upstate New York, I had some really unusual experiences there, very metaphysical kind of things. And I studied charismatic religion with her at the same time that I was looking at Eckhart Tolle, and
Mm.
it's like all this other stuff started opening up. And then when I moved to Vermont, I still questioned everything, and I started finding Buddhism, and that was probably 1986.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's still my philosophy of choice,
Mhm.
but I am always learning about things that kind of don't quite balance with the divine feminine. Does that make sense?
How do you mean?
There are some goddesses in the Buddhist religion who are very, very evil.
Oh.
And it just, to me, it's kind of out of balance with Buddhism, because Buddhism is all about seeing what's there, being in the moment, accepting things as they are. And some of those goddesses are like nightmares.
Mm.
And to me, that just doesn't equate sometimes. It's a very negative image.
Yeah. Are there, and I don't know much about Buddhism, except what most people know about Buddhism, like the on the surface stuff and the mindfulness and all of that. Are there equally male deities that have those same negative connotations as
Yeah.
well. So it's
Yeah.
not just like all the females are crazy bitches, but the males are cool.
No, it's not like that
So
at all.
at least there's balance there.
Yeah,
Equal
exactly.
opportunity, evil
I'm
gods.
I'm at this point in my life where I'm like, okay, I want to take this from here and that from there, and that's who I'll be.
I think that's the
You know?
beauty of I don't know. When I look at religion as a whole, I think the basis of all of those religions is the same, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
It's do no harm, treat others as you want to be treated. And like it, for lack of a better term, don't be a dick. Like
Yeah,
just don't be a dick to each other, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's it. But then you get into the organization of it. And then
right.
who's in charge of that organization. And once you have someone in charge of an organization, then you get othering happening and you have us and them. And then you have a hierarchy of people in control, and the organization itself becomes what we see in organized religions, the hypocrisies and the rules and the, like I said, the othering, right? Um, One of the things that drew me to the as I'm going to use the word pagan, I'm going to use the blanket of pagan, even though I say I'm a kitchen witch and I do practice witchcraft. I'm not just a witch, because I do pull from all these different pantheons in terms of what I believe in and what deities I work with. But I think that one of the things that is so appealing about that spiritual path is that you can pull from everywhere. There is no rules, right? As someone who was born and raised in a very Catholic situation, it's
Hmm.
these are the rules. Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. Be good or you won't go to heaven. The end. Don't
Hmm.
be, be a girl, but don't be girly. Don't be sexual. Don't be outspoken. Don't be beautiful, but don't be ugly. Don't pull attention. All the don'ts. And then when you find this other world of, wait, I can be this way or that way, or I can believe in this, or I can pull from there, it opens up this world of possibilities in your spiritual self. Is that an experience that you had?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I saw as I started, I mean, for years I've done lots and lots of research about cultures and social constructs and all that stuff, but to to pull back the layers and to find out how many goddesses there've been through the centuries and how few I actually knew really, yeah, really kind of shocked me, because I had done all this searching before through all of these other religions and saw very few female faces. So once I started learning about them and peeling back the onion layers and finding out that most of these goddesses existed from the beginning of time. It's
Mhm.
the male society, once they started building those rules and laws and started putting religion into a shape that it wasn't meant to fit into,
Mm.
that's when all of the female goddesses kind of took the back seat. It wasn't a good idea to go out in the field at night and howl at the moon, or to dance in the light. It was not only against the rules, but dangerous for your own life to try to use an herb to help somebody soothe a stomach ache.
Mhm.
And, then it became, through the years, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I'm sure, but through the years, hundreds of years, all of a sudden women couldn't be doctors when they were
Yeah.
the ones who did it from the beginning of time.
Mhm.
How fucked up is that?
It's so fucked up that idea that women, what I practice mainly is kitchen witchery. So it is all about herbs and food and how ingredients are used not only to heal the body but the spirit, and that goes back to wise women in tribes and
Right.
the doctors or the healers. That's where all of that comes from, nurturing and caring about each other through what we learn in
Hmm.
as women, as healers, as your instinct to help, right? And there it
Right.
was taken from you. And I can remember a class I took in college. Excuse me, there's a kitten over here, can I help you? Okay. I have two little black cats and they love to just interrupt. They love to interrupt. But I can remember a class I took in college, which was one of my first. I was just talking about this to someone the other day. It was very pivotal for me in my spiritual journey because I was like you, super involved in my church. I went on like high school Catholic retreats where like girls were being asked to sign virginity cards.
Okay.
Like everybody were given these cards and it was like, you're going to promise yourself to Jesus. And I was in this group of girls and everybody was like, I was like, I'm not going to sign that. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, listen, I'm not going to make a promise to the big guy I'm not sure I can keep. So, like the fact that the control of your sexuality, even in our time, the control of your sexuality, the control of losing your power as a woman in these subtle little ways that when you're brought up in it, you don't even realize. But I digress. I took a class in college, first semester of college. It was called Women in Religion. It was an elective. And I was like, oh, this would be super easy. The Women in Religion class would just, show up and take this class. And I was so rattled by what the teacher was saying about matriarchal societies, goddesses, showing us slides of like goddess sculptures that go back to the beginning of time, like you said, that I was so messed up about this, I dropped the class, but I kept the textbook. And I read the book on my own and I was like, this makes so much sense. And that was kind of like my aha moment into going, wait, there are other non-Christian based spiritual paths out there.
A lot.
I mean, you don't know if you grow up in that bubble, you don't know that exists.
Right.
Right.
You're right.
Right. You don't know. And then you start seeing those things and then you can't unsee them. And you see goddess everywhere, whether you're identifying with one or many or working with one or many. I just think, it's amazing. Where were you finding these, the first time you were introduced to a goddess spirituality? Can you remember which particular goddess it was that kind of was that light bulb moment for you?
Sarasvati.
Really?
It was in yoga class. Yeah, it was in yoga class. And I've done yoga my whole life, but I never had teachers or gurus who taught any goddess spirituality. They were all about the yoga, but not about where it came from. They were all about, this is what your body does, but not about the spirituality of yoga. And yoga is really heavily based in the Hindu religion, who has lots and lots of goddesses. So
powerful, amazing goddesses in the Hindu culture.
Yeah. So I went to this special workshop with the woman that I was taking yoga from, and it was all about education and learning and creativity. And she really told us all about Sarasvati. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know this goddess existed. I started doing some research and loved everything she stands for and felt like, wow, that is somebody who speaks to who I am at this point in my life. So I started looking a little bit deeper and found, I was just like, don't let me go down this rabbit hole because there's lots of things and I want to chase them all.
Yeah.
I want to know everything.
Yeah.
So the irony, and you'll appreciate this, is I did most of my research at Duke University's Divinity Library.
Wow.
And I will say probably 99% of the books that I used for research, the only ones that I could find on the divine feminine, were written by men.
Of course.
And I'm like, wait a minute. No. I want to see what the difference is, because I'm used to doing research about the way people write. I did my MFA research on women authors and how they wrote, both privately and publicly, people who kept journals versus the ones who use different tones and languages. And with my PhD, it's about transgender authors and whether their voice changes when they make their transition. So with that in mind, you know, naturally I brought all of that stuff to this research, and I was like, I can't believe I haven't come across much of this at all. And then when I started asking the women who responded, who were the bulk of my research about, you know, how it affects other women, and do you see the female face in your religion? And that just opened my eyes even more, because I made it a point, and if you read the book, you'll be able to see it. All of the women that I interviewed, I wanted to interview in different philosophies. So you're not gonna, it's not just Christian women in this book. It's not just Jewish, it's Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Native American, and Earth. There's just everybody in there, because I wanted to know all the stories that haven't been told and still haven't been told. There's a term that I used in the first draft of this book, that through the drafts and through the conversations about, you know, what your theme is going to be for this book and how you want it to reach your audience, we took the term out for the most part. It's still in there, but it's women's Holocaust. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
Think about it. Throughout all of history, how many women have been killed just for the fact that they were female?
Too many.
Yeah, we're talking more than any war.
Millions and millions and millions of women, just because they're women. 100%.
And yet, you know, even in a book like this, we're too afraid to approach that kind of a hot topic, because that means that, oh wow, there's going to be a lot of people who are pissed off about that, and we're still too afraid to piss anybody off.
Because we're women, and we've been taught over centuries, keep your head down, be nice, smile, and protect everybody else, smooth everything over, don't stand up for yourself, everything's fine. To use that term is, I think you need the strong term. You need that word. Most people don't want to say the word Holocaust. You wouldn't want to say the female Holocaust or the women's Holocaust, because it's so loaded. You know, it's so loaded, and you can't look away from a word like that. It makes you stop. It makes you think, and people don't want to think about something like that. And they certainly don't want to admit, men don't necessarily want to admit those things have happened.
Women don't either. Women don't either.
Do you think that we as women have, I mean, this is maybe not the right thing to say, but I believe that we always have a participation in the way we are treated.
One of the reasons I wrote this is so that we could see ourselves as strong. We could see ourselves in the goddesses and know that, you know, every attribute that they had is something that we can have too, or we can align with or aspire to. And if we do that for ourselves, then we can see that, I can see that you're doing it and that somebody else is doing it. I'm going to respect you. And, you know, we respect ourselves and we respect all the other women around us. You can't let anything else happen. You know, you do take control, but you do say, well, maybe no, I don't want that. Or maybe at all, just damn right no.
Damn right. No, right. One of the most empowering things anyone ever said to me is, no is a complete sentence.
Yep.
And we do not, I think as women, we're always justifying, right? No, I can't. No, because no. Oh, I'm so sorry. No. And although we're not talking about these, you know, huge things, you know, it just as simple of an act as, maybe I don't like my meal at a restaurant and I'm going to return that meal at a restaurant. No, it's fine. I'm sorry. Is it okay? Versus, A man might approach that situation completely different and say, excuse me, I'd like to send my meal back. It didn't come out right. A woman is going to say, excuse me, I'm sorry. Would it be okay if, and there's always that air of apology. And so we automatically take this, if we take that kind of passive, meek role in something as simple as standing up for ourselves because we don't like the food on our plate, how could we possibly be empowered to stand up for ourselves in heavy situations? And how could we possibly stand up for other women in heavy
Right.
situations?
Right.
Right. So like considering the past few years in the Me Too movement, and obviously this is exactly what we're talking about, you know, the continued battle for women's rights. What are you hoping people are going to get out of this book?
I'm hoping that they're going to come away feeling like they have more power. The right to say no, the right to walk away. I'll tell you, I have been through a lot of shit in my life.
Yeah.
I went through a very abusive marriage, to the point where we had to have the cops at the house on a regular basis. I mean, you know, loaded shotguns. He was going to kill people. He ended up being put in jail a couple of times. Anyways, the court system did nothing to me. There was one day that we had in court where he literally told the lieutenant of the police department, who was my witness, that he was going to kill him before we walked out of court. They let him walk out of court. Now, years passed, and I had an unfortunate circumstance where I went out with somebody who found out where I lived and started stalking me. This is not too long ago. And when I went to the police department and told them about it, they said, I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't do anything because he hasn't done anything to you.
Yep.
And I said, so things haven't changed since the 70s.
Nope.
So what are you going to do? Wait for him to kill me? And the guy stopped, the cop stopped. And 5 minutes later, he said, I'm going to send somebody to sit outside the house for the next couple of days. So what do you have to do? You have to shame them into doing something.
Yep. To think that we're in 2022 and that's still a conversation that you have to have, that goes back to what we were talking about before about the organizations and who's in charge and the othering of women. I was having this conversation with my cousin, the PhD candidate. We were talking, she's studying specifically women in art and women as owners of museums, which is brilliant because the idea, not to, we could totally cut this part out, but I think you'd find it interesting. The modern structure of a museum is something that men put in place, but women at the turn of the century in the Victorian era were, and if she hears this, she's going to be like, you totally got that wrong, but it's that women, like if you think about Isabella Stewart Gardner, she built her home to house her collection. And at some point that became a museum and not a home collection because of this organization of men trying to monetize who got to see art. Right. So it was only wealthy white men who got to see art or put art in their homes. So she's studying that. And we were having this whole conversation about the othering of women and how women have been put in this, you know, women's rights. We're human beings, you know, just like people of color. These are human beings. They're not other. Trans people, they're people. They're not other. We're all the fucking same, and we all deserve to live in a world where we feel safe and seen. And to think in a situation like that, where you're going to the cops and you're like, I am afraid for my life. And they're like, me, because you are a woman. If dismissed. If a white cis man walked in there and said, I think somebody's following me, they would be like, great, no problem. We'll see what's going on, bro. We'll see how we can help you.
They'd be out the door, lock and load.
Yeah. It is insane to think that is the truth of where we are now and
Unfortunately.
today, right?
Yeah.
So how does the work that you're doing with, finding the divine feminine in the world and within ourselves, how does that translate into the female empowerment? How does that translate into standing up for ourselves and others? Like, what is it about that that can help us to see that?
I think I'm going to go back to my first days in college, and I actually was in my doctoral program. We did some work with Jacques Lacan, who talks about how we envision ourselves, the self, from
Mm,
day one as babies. We look in this mirror
mm,
and we recognize that face,
mhm.
So I might look at your face, you might be my mother. I recognize that face, so I see that face as trusting and so forth. And I think we carry that throughout our lives, but we don't see that face as, how can I put this? Um, that that self that we see is something that society reconstructs after
Mm,
that initial mirror image.
mhm, mhm,
Society tells you who you are, and
mhm.
that might not have been who you originally saw in that mirror as a baby, or the face that you saw. The first mirror image that we see is in eyes. It's usually
Mm.
your mother's eyes. You see yourself in your mother's eyes.
Ooh, that's loaded, Dawn.
Yeah, well, it's true. It's true.
That's loaded because then it comes down to early childhood development, right?
Absolutely.
And how we see ourselves as children, as girl children. What do we learn from our parents about the roles of
Hmm.
mom and dad, older
Hmm.
sibling, brother, sister? And how do we see those? How do we take on those characteristics or those behaviors as to what we think we are, right?
And how much are you being taught by society about goddesses, about the female role in philosophy or religion? Most of the religions of the world are run by men.
Yeah.
There are very few female-based religions, or very few religions where the women actually play a pivotal decision role.
Yep.
And until that changes, it's actually not changing. It's going back to the way it used to be ages and ages ago.
Right. We had it right. We had it right. And then some
Well, I'm
guy
not
came
sure.
in,
I'm not sure it's totally right, but it certainly is a whole lot better than right now.
right? Some guy came in and was like, no, I can't let those girls be in charge because they know more than me and I have a fragile ego. So I'm going to change the structure of everything to keep them in their place.
Now, what automatically is the thing that drives all of cultural change is money, it's economy. And the church figured out that they can take this plot of land and have some people on it, and they can control the land, and they used the religious philosophy to do that. And they were the ones who were the big landowners in Europe, and actually in many other cultures as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So then, as we see today, those tides turning with women being so much in the workforce, with women being executives and doctors and PhDs
Mhm.
and educators and putting out work and doing those sort of things, do you feel that culturally that change is happening, albeit nowhere near as fast as we'd like it to?
I would like to say yes. You say we're leaders in education. We are the first educators in every
Mhm.
home. The women are the first educators. We teach the kids how to talk, how to walk, how to
Right.
eat, you know. Um, so
Yep.
that's always been one of our roles. Caretaker's always been one of our roles, but it's always been that those roles have been looked down upon as lesser than, or
Hmm.
not strong. Um,
Hmm.
and even though I do see some women moving into leadership roles, I think it's going to take a while. It's going to take a long time for us to get to the point where I think it happens faster with us individually. You know, women tend to get the self-help books and to go to classes and to do all
Yeah,
that
to
stuff,
better
you know?
ourselves, right? To take
Yeah,
responsibility. Um,
yeah.
I want to touch on something you just said about women being the first educators and
Hmm.
teaching the children how to eat and dress and all of those things. And I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this in a way. And that those roles are often looked down upon, right? Oh, she's just a stay-at-home mom. Oh, she's just this. She's just that. Oh, well, she doesn't work. She gets to stay home, right? Now, I myself do not have human babies. I have fur babies, and I have a company, which is my baby, and I have employees, which I nurture and care for. But I think it's really important that you pointed out that those home jobs are often frowned upon, even by the women who are doing them.
Yeah.
In the late 70s and early 80s, when there was that big drive to put women into the workforce and women left the home, right? And you had, two incomes happening. There was this, and I think there still is, this feeling that as women, you can have it all. You can be a great mom, and you can have a great career, and you can have this and the perfect body, and you can have the perfect home and the perfect marriage. You can have all these things that are perfect, perfect, perfect. Never saying whether or not you should, right?
Or that
Because
there's enough hours in the day to do that, or that you're not going to kill yourself trying.
exactly the pressure of that. And people look at that and might say, oh, but that's feminism, is that you can have everything. And I say feminism is you can have what you want. You
Right.
can be who you are. And if who you are is who you want to be, is being the best stay-at-home mom and, making Pinterest alligators with your babies, do it and be proud of it. There's no shame in taking a traditional gender role. It might not be for me, but there's no shame in that. How do you feel about that? And what are your thoughts on the word feminism and how people react to that word even today?
I think feminism has gotten a bad rap. I mean, I think it's become a negative word. And I can remember back when the word started, I decided it was humanism, not feminism, because,
I
feminism
love
is
that.
is we're better than, but we're actually just striving to be equal to.
Mm-hmm,
And to me, that's humanism, you know.
mm-hmm,
Um, yes, feminism has gotten a bad rap. And I think it's because people saw it as an either or rather
mm-hmm.
than, wait a minute, let us catch up with everything that's been given to you all these years, and let us have a say on what we want to do, when we want to do it, with whom and how, you know.
Right. Why is
I
that so
think that
hard?
yeah, exactly. Looking at one of the basic goddesses that every single religion has is Mother Nature. She might be called Gaia, she might be called something else somewhere else, but Mother Nature, that birthing being that is responsible for the beginning of Earth and the care of it, to me,
Mm-hmm.
is the one that, people just kind of laugh at. It's become iconic rather than, no, this is a being that we can celebrate and that we
Right.
can be part of, and we can be proud of being a homemaker, or a person who can give birth, or who likes to care for other people, or
Right.
who has those skills. Yeah, those are powerful skills, damn it. I would like somebody who has those skills to run the country.
Yes. Yes. Someone who has a nurturing side, someone who cares about more than themselves. And I don't think that, and maybe this is not, I mean, I know lots of men that have those qualities,
Oh,
and
and I
I'm
talk about the divine masculine in here too. It's just that we have given enough voice to that over the years that
Yes,
this voice has to be louder in order to be
100%.
heard for all the years that we weren't.
100%, 100%. And I also think that that's a disservice to like the disservice of othering women and putting those terms, making those terms negative, that idea of being a caregiver and being tender and being emotional. It really hurts men.
Yeah.
It really hurts men that they are brought up that they're not allowed to do those things. They're not allowed to be compassionate, and they're not allowed to be soft and gentle and nurturing. And I think that is, it's not just a female issue. That othering has hurt them as well. And I think that's really sad too.
It is, absolutely.
I think that's really, really sad. Oh God, I have so many, I've been taking notes as you're talking about so many things I want to talk about. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to really get in depth with the book. And I have a couple questions about that as well. So let's take a quick break and let's hear from our amazing sponsors. And we'll be right back with Dawn Reno Langley. This is amazing. We'll be right back. We are back with the astoundingly amazing Dawn Reno Langley. And I'm digging this conversation so much because most of my guests are witches and we talk about witchcraft, right? So this is so great because I'm really passionate about everything that you're talking about and about goddess spirituality and how it relates to the way we walk through the world as feminists, as women, as human beings, and what it has to do within our society, right? So let's dive into your new book, which is You Are Divine.
Okay.
And so you had said that you interviewed all these amazing people from all these different walks of faith, if we can use that word faith. What kinds of questions did you ask them?
Oh, goodness. I asked everybody if they knew of the Women's Holocaust. Nobody did, which was really funny. I asked them to tell me about their religious, spiritual journey, and what faces they saw in that spiritual journey. I asked them to tell me who were the caretakers that they knew. What else? But I had a list of questions which I could have right here, but we talked about the treatment of women as a whole and about societies and what happened within their society and their families. And the questions about their families and how their families dealt with religious events really was very eye-opening, because I would say, I hate to say 100%, maybe 99% of the women that I interviewed had questioned their religion at some point, whether they stayed in it, and accepted the answers they got, or whether they moved on and explored something else. Most of them had some kind of shift in their spirituality, which I found fascinating.
Is that very human?
I think so. I think we all question that which we can't see. And even though a lot of the goddesses were human, and they just became goddesses, not all of them by a long shot, but you can't help but look at a goddess and see an image that you recognize, somebody who might be on the street. Whereas a lot of the gods, I don't think I'd recognize God walking down the street.
He looks like Santa. Looks like Santa.
You know that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, right. Well, the traditional God that I was brought up with in a Catholic church is Zeus, is Odin. He's a big burly man with a white beard who sees everything and knows everything you're doing. So he's Santa, basically, right? Like that's, I mean, that's that image of the the white beard, burly guy, lives in the sky, father figure, he's Zeus, he's Odin, he sees you
Moses.
when you're sleeping. I mean, Santa is the traditional images of Santa Claus are based off of Odin, the All Father.
Yeah.
That's where all this shit, it's all the same shit. And then we just put different names on it and different inflections on it so that we as human beings can identify with it, right? We
want to find the human face
want
in
to
the
find
supernatural.
yes, and that's in my upbringing, right? It was God created man, not women, but God created humans in his image. But the truth is, humans created gods in their image. And what I love about so many of the other, polytheistic traditions is that these gods and goddesses are flawed just like us. So
Yeah,
we look
exactly.
we look at them and we go, oh yeah, Persephone is kind of a mess, isn't she? Like
Yeah.
we get her, we get her so much,
Zeus
but
needs some anger management training.
right, right. But we digress. I wanted to know, as you were talking about their spirituality and these things, how do you, as a scholastic person, as an academic, because you really have been in the world of academia, you teach and you write and you do all these things. Also, as a tangent, we definitely need to talk about your theater critic status because I'm a giant theater nerd. Okay. So
Okay.
how do you, as someone who is in this scholastic and academic world, how does the spiritual part, the unseen belief, the faith part fit on you? I know sometimes people that are very scientific or very academic have a hard time connecting with the unseen or the unexplainable. Has that been something for you that was a struggle?
I am not a scientist. Maybe social justice might be considered a science by some, but I am not a scientist. I am a writer and I love the stories. And those stories, every single one of those people has a story.
Yeah.
And we as human beings, that's how we understand what's going on around us. We tell stories. So that, to me, I think is what fascinates me more than anything else. Do I believe all the stories? No. But if you tell me about a Japanese girl who was born into a poor family and she lived in the mountains and she healed her whole village with this magical, I'm going to believe that. It may be a little bit hyped up, but that ends up being a goddess. And she just happened to be, this was a story that was passed down through the centuries. And they all get embellished.
Right.
It's like, everybody changes something.
Right. But like you said, you see yourself in that story.
Yep, I do. And when you have cultures, basically the way you build a culture is by marking down the stories of your culture, the stories of the family and the community and how you understand what's happening up in the stars, or, where those big whales are coming from under the ocean. That's all stories we tell us to help us understand.
Yeah.
So to me, it's history, literature, philosophy. It's all those sciences which you can't really explain and you can't quantify.
Right.
Do you believe in them? I guess that's called faith.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that so much. And so as you're writing this book and as you're interviewing all these people and you're exploring their faith and their stories, right? Was there anything in particular, one interview, one story that really surprised or inspired you?
Several. Oh God, yeah. Several of these women I knew before I interviewed them. And one of them is a Baha'i. She's a particularly good friend of mine. And I'm going to say this only because it adds to the story. She's African American. And she and I grew up about an hour away from each other. We didn't know each other growing up, but we came to be really, really best friends. And she was telling me, as a Baha'i, how she views women in her religious structure and what she saw as female role models growing up, she said Aunt Jemima was a female face that she saw growing up, that I won't say twisted, but she understood that it was a negative image.
Right.
And I understood that too, because I wrote a book on advertising, and I've written on African-American arts and collectibles, and done all the research, and I know everything that represents. So I was shocked when she said that. And we sat down and we had a conversation in our house, must have lasted 2 hours.
Wow.
About how that particular role model, the woman that took care of the house, that was, the cook and the caretaker and the one who nursed the babies, that was a positive role model for her. And she said that, that to her was compassion, and that to her was, somebody with a heart. She didn't see the fact that the woman was more often than not being forced into that situation, that she didn't have the opportunity to have an education, that she probably was, being abused at some point or another. She just saw that was a compassionate figure, and that was a face that she saw that looked like hers, the only one.
So she made it what she needed that to be. She turned that very inappropriate advertising into what she needed to see, because it was the only face like hers that she saw.
Yeah. And she knew that. She knew that, and to this day, she keeps salt and pepper shakers. I think she's got a cookie jar. You walk into her house, and there's a couple of Aunt Jemimas in there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is surprising.
Yeah.
She finds comfort in that image.
That's a woman taking control over something that's negative and turning it into a positive.
Right. And so she has this image that for her symbolizes compassion and comfort and home and all of these things that she put into that. She turned that, because as a little girl, she didn't know that was negative, right? She just went, oh, look, there's someone that looks like me, that this is the goddess, the figure that I need. Wow. I would imagine that was really very surprising for you to hear.
It was really surprising, and that's why we had a very long conversation about it. I mean, I've been very lucky to have friends and family members who have shared with me their experiences, and that was one that I felt was unexpected.
And talking about women in the media and how women are portrayed, and what we see as little girls and what we see as adult women, something for me that has always been missing, right? I'm a cisgender white female who grew up in New York, but I'm fat, and there aren't fat girls on TV. There aren't fat girls in movies. There aren't fat girls in love stories. We're always portrayed as the plucky best friend, or, we're not sexual. We're not beautiful, so that is like, I'm finally seeing some of that representation happen. There's a couple of shows on that feature plus size women. You can't even say the word fat without people going, oh, you're not fat. No, it's okay. Like it is what it is. Like, and that's something too, that and I don't want to say modern witchcraft, but if you buy a tarot deck or an oracle deck of goddess cards, the only chubby women are the pregnant goddesses.
Really?
You might see curves, but you don't see anyone who's over a size 10. Let's just be realistic. If you were to look at modern pagan art, modern witchcraft art, most of the things that are going to be on the surface, most of the things that are in your mainstream, covers of books that show goddesses, covers of tarot decks that show goddesses, are all beautiful, tall, slender women. Most women don't.
It's ironic because the earliest representations of those goddesses, stone carvings and so forth, were all very lush, full-figured women.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You
Right.
did not see a skinny one.
So there's another example of how media, how we portray ourselves, what is considered beautiful as the female form, even in these little niche areas. I have a friend who did a beautiful oracle deck, and the first version of the oracle deck was all, it was, it's like witches and cats and cutie little art, and she realized she left out people of color. And they went back and did the deck over again, and they added women of color into this deck. There's still no one chubby in there. I don't necessarily know if people see women that way, even though that's what we look like. So you get into all these layers of different kinds of women, different body types of women. I know that you've done a lot of research on transgendered women. I don't know if you've done the research as well on transgender men, but I would assume that you have. I love that in the description of your book, it says this is for anyone who identifies as a woman. How important is that to you and to this work for you?
I think it's vitally important. I think that, we were talking about othering before. And if I say this is just for people who look like you and me, then we're othering everybody else. But we talk about, divine female qualities are not just in people who are born female. They're in everybody, just like the divine masculine is. It's a balance. It's a yin yang. I tease, but I really believe it's true that men tend to adopt the characteristics that we attribute to females as we get older, and women tend to gather the attributes of men as we get older. Women become stronger when men become more likely to cry, and I'm being very general here because I know plenty of men who are younger who have no problem with their emotions. But
I would love for you to expand more on that in terms of as we get older.
Yeah, I see a lot of, I'm to the age right now where a lot of my friends are settling into their years where they're not going to change, that this is the way it is. And most of the women that I know, and I'm being general, I'm saying my friends,
right,
are quite happy being alone. They don't really want to be with a man because then it means somebody to take care of or something.
right.
They don't see the good stuff about being with somebody. They're just stuck with, that sucks, I'm never going to do that again. Whereas the men that I know are so, and I'm talking about my age group, so into, I got to find somebody right away. I got to find somebody. Gotta. That they just, dude, don't you have a life?
Well, I think there's something to be said about that. And if I don't generally talk about my mother, and so this is very much of a diversion for me, but when my father passed away, my mother had all of her girlfriends around her, and she had her sisters, and she made friends, and the widows have become a family for her. Women take care of women. I think it's part of who we are. I think that nurturing element, we support each other and we lift each other up. I think that it is unfortunate that men don't generally take care of each other in those ways. You don't generally see a bunch of men bringing over food to someone whose wife just passed away. You don't see them going, hey, let's get you out of the house. Let's go get a glass of wine. Let's go.
They might do that. They might do that.
But not with at least in my experience in my age group and in the observation of seeing my mother and her friends, there's a community that women create around each other that I don't think men create around you. They might have one close friend, or two close friends, but they don't have that support group of like these girls are going to ride or die. They're going to come pick you up. They're going to go do this. These girls are going to take care of you for the long haul, not the immediate, you need something right now, bro. Let me know if you need something, they're going to be there the whole time. And I think it's unfortunate because we don't see that as often in men. They don't form emotional bonds like that in the same way that women tend to do. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree, but I also have had relationships with men who are really great caretakers, sometimes better than females. So I think that there's something on both sides of that statement. I do believe that women are the ones who form the communities. That again has been changing due to the fact that most women work. But now we're back home again. So it's like, wait a minute. I tried to get out of this house so I wouldn't have to cook dinner every night. Right. Now I'm back home cooking dinner and taking care of the kids. What happened? So I think whoever is the caretaker ends up being the one who doesn't take care of themselves. Doesn't matter if it's male or female. But they're also the ones who have the communities because they're the ones who are taking care of the kids, getting them off to school, talking to them about, and usually you have relationships with other kids' parents. So if you're in a normal nuclear family, then one person is usually the major caretaker and the other one is not as much. I don't know any family that is half and half.
Oh yeah.
Pure down the middle,
Yeah.
One person is always doing a little bit more.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
for sure.
The point that I'm going circular here, the point that I'm trying to make is that way back in the day, and this was brought to mind by a play that I covered about the clothesline community. Back in the day when women used to, and this was mostly slaves, they used to do the wash and they would be out there hanging it up, talking about anything that went on in the household. So they had this whole community, Johnny had a stomach ache the other day. I don't know what to do with them. And this person over here says, I got some spearmint. Let me give it to you. Make a tea, blah, 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 blah. Or, my kid came home with a math book and I have no idea how to read it. Well, maybe I can help you with that or so-and-so.
Right.
I mean, it's all the stuff, the news was passed, if somebody died or had a baby, whatever, all of that stuff was passed over the clothesline and the people hanging the clothes were female, in every culture, men didn't do the laundry.
Thank God that has changed because my husband does the laundry. Thank goodness. No, but you're 100% right. Women form those networks of communication, networks of, that the old term of it takes a village, right? Well, mostly it was the women doing the caretaking.
Right.
And you hate to generalize those traditional typical gender roles of the men are away doing, the hunting gathering part and the women are back home taking care of family and nurturing and keeping the space. It is difficult to separate that out from our lives today because there are still elements of that. And if we want to get back to what we were talking about before, all of that's okay if that's what you choose. Right.
The thing is we need to change our perspective on it.
Right.
It's not that, whether it's maintained in your household or not, it doesn't really matter. It's how you look on it.
Right.
How do you think that taking care of children is something that we give to the stupidest people on earth? Here, take care of my kid. I don't want to see it till it's 17. Or do we give it, the baby, the child, to someone we trust with our lives? That's a pretty friggin' important job.
Absolutely. And I never heard it put that way before, but it's true. Like, are we giving the future of our families, the future of our societies to the stupidest people, or are we giving them to the people who can educate them and teach them compassion and care and sort of those sort of things? I've never
Why
heard it.
why isn't that job just as important
Right.
as CEO of a corporation?
Right. 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 And what you choose, right? Why am I made to feel less of a woman because I don't have children? And
Right.
why does everybody think it's okay to ask me why I don't have children? This happens all the time to
I
me.
know. I
I'll
know.
be out somewhere at a trade show, like working my company, and I'll be like, oh, this is my company. I own this company and blah, blah, blah. And people will be, and it's almost always women who are like, well, does you have kids? And I'm like, no. Why? Don't you want them? No, I don't. I don't. And it's none of your fucking business why I don't have children. But the idea of somehow that I'm less of a woman because I do not have biological babies.
It's
My
all comes
nephew,
back to respecting yourself makes you
right,
respect others.
right. I have a nephew who is adopted. Is his mother less of a woman because she adopted a child instead of gave birth? No. There's so many, oh my goodness, there's so many layers. And I think that ties directly back into, Dawn, the work that you're doing in terms of this goddess work. The thought of I've been doing a lot of work with the goddess Bridget lately because of the season that we're in and the hearth and home. And it was just in bulk. And so I've been working with her quite a bit lately. And she is the goddess that keeps the home fire burning. She is this beautiful symbol of caretaking and strength. And, again, that warmth. To me, that's who she is, the transformative fires of being able to take care of your family by turning raw ingredients into edible food, right? That's what she's doing. And if I see myself in her and her in me, then the idea of being home and cooking and taking care of my family is divine. It's not something to poo-poo. And I think that's why the work that you're doing and this book, You Are Divine, is so important, because it literally rewrites the way we think about ourselves as women. I mean, you blow my mind. Now I'm like going to be your biggest fan, and I'm going to stalk you on Facebook.
Well, thank you. You can. I'll let you.
I'm totally can you tell us where to find you, Dawn, and where to find your book? This episode is probably not going to air until May or June, even though we're recording it in the winter. It's probably not going to air for a little while. So tell us where we can find your book, where we can find you online, how we can follow you and learn more about you.
Okay. Well, you can find the book at any bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever, or on Llewellyn's site. You can find me online. I'm difficult to hide. It's dawnrenolangley.net. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I do regular meditations every day on TikTok.
Oh.
Yeah. And yeah. So I'm all over the place.
Absolutely.
Can I close with a quote for you?
Oh, please. And then I have to ask you one question, which is my question I ask all of my guests. So let's hear a quote from the book.
I do want to share this. Robin Rumi is a writer and educator, and she studies philosophical differences. And this one really spoke to me. All women are a reflection, a mirror of the goddess. Remember, you are the universe figuring itself out. So, of course, you are identical to the female aspect of the divinity. You're the universe figuring itself out.
I love that. I love it. And we all are, aren't we? We're all just doing our best, figuring stuff out. And the beauty of that to me is that we never get there.
That's right.
The journey is the point. You'll never be finished figuring it out. You'll always be learning. You'll always be finding new parts of yourself and new parts of other women and learning from them. Right. What a beautiful, beautiful quote. I feel all warm and squishy inside.
Yay.
That's kind of the point, right? Like you
Yeah,
bolstered that feeling of, I don't know, divinity, but also peace, right? To feel
good.
peaceful within yourself, I think is part of this work of finding the divine in all of us. Um, wow. You Are Divine by Dawn Reno Langley. I am just so excited for you. I think this is going to be, I think people are really, really going to resonate with it. And okay, one more question, completely random, has nothing to do with anything that we've talked about. I ask this to all of my guests at the end of the show. I am a kitchen witch, which means the way I practice my energy work and the way I practice my religion is through feeding others, working with food to create energy and you know, joy and all of these wonderful things with intention and love. So if I, as a kitchen witch, was to cook for you one magical meal, what would that meal be and why?
Hmm. I would think a very delicious tea and some kind of a pie because I love dessert. And I think that tea is the best place where you can put a lot of wonderfully fragrant herbs and spices. And there's nothing like a hot cup of tea or in your hands. That to me is like, gets all the senses going. So
So
that's what I'd like.
I would love, because you are so grounded in feminine energy and you're so full of goddess energy, and that's all root chakra and all sacral chakra. I would love to make you some sort of a berry pie, something with raspberries and cherries and all those beautiful reds to symbolize womb and motherhood and womanhood. And
Mm.
then I would pair it with a hibiscus and pomegranate tea.
Ooh, that
Does
sounds
that sound
wonderful.
right?
Oh, yeah. That sounds wonderful.
So I write down, I get these, I ask my guests about what they would want, and then I'll get inspired to write a recipe, and
Ah, cool.
I'll put it on my site. Um, yes, cherries and berries pie, right? And we could eat it in a red tent, and it would be just all this wonderful goddess energy. It would be so good. Dawn Reno Langley, you are divine.
Well,
You
thank you.
you really are. You're amazing, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some time with me today. This was a real treat. It was just eye-opening and wonderful, and I think our listeners are really going to love it. Thank you so much for being here. We will look
Thank
forward to your
you.
book. Oh, and until next time, everyone, I leave you with many blessings and so much gratitude. Thanks for being here.